Good morning. I'm the Reverend Peggy Meeker, and I am grateful to be your guest preacher this morning. It's good to be here with all of you and to be able to create sacred time and space in this way, in the midst of an anxious world. We'll have a somewhat abbreviated service today, and I'm going to start with a poem written just a few days ago by the Reverend Lynn Unger, a Unitarian Universalist minister. It's called Pandemic. Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. Today is the 13th Sunday of winter, the last Sunday of winter. And so today we celebrate what is coming. Spring, more light, the greening of our world. And we honor this time that is still winter, a time of seeds growing underground, of green stalks pushing up toward the light, of the earliest flowers bravely sharing their blossoms. And too, we acknowledge all that makes this morning so different than we could have imagined a week ago. If we were physically together, we would be singing the hymn, Gather the Spirit, number 347 in the gray hymnal. Let me include just one verse from that hymn. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. And yes, we are one as we gather in virtual community. And so let's share a time of centering, of quieting down, settling into our chair, or into our stance if we're standing, or into whatever is supporting us, feeling how we are supported, both physically and by the reaching out of hearts. And let's share a brief time of silence to notice our breathing, to notice how we're feeling right now, and to notice whatever comes into our thoughts or our hearts. And now let's imagine that we can offer a great calmness and openness and peace to ourselves and to anyone for whom we're concerned. A great calmness and openness and peace. And for the world. and may our thoughts and our prayers bring forth blessings. Amen. My sermon topic is wisdom, and we need wisdom for these days, don't we? I guess we always do, but right now, with so much uncertainty about COVID-19 and about the economy, not to mention all the other national and global issues, many of us have questions about what we should or should not be doing. I know that I am having those questions. This afternoon, the installation of the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan at First Unitarian in Rochester will not be taking place due to concerns about bringing people together from around the region and around the country. This past Tuesday, just before the decision to cancel was announced, and before so many other events were canceled, it's a different world now. Tuesday morning, I made the decision not to attend the installation because of my own health challenges. I'm in that category of older and with underlying diseases. It was a hard decision to make and to share with my colleagues. Many of us had been looking forward to robing and processing and celebrating at the installation. 2 other ministers had already said they wouldn't be coming due to similar concerns. But I see myself as healthy and strong and young. And I did not want to say that I was leery about attending, but it seemed the wise thing to do. According to my new Oxford American Dictionary, wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. I went looking for quotes about wisdom, and I didn't find many that we would all recognize, aside from the one in the March newsletter from Shakespeare. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. I did find one other quote that I especially liked, and it's from Herbert Hoover, who said, "Wisdom consists not so much in knowing what to do in the ultimate as in knowing what to do next." As a way to start thinking about wisdom, that seems wise to me, not having to know everything, but knowing what to do next. I thought I had a good quote taped on the wall over my desk, but I guess I hadn't looked at it in a while because it turned out to be just a pointer to an article with my own somewhat cryptic summary. And I quote, "There are 3 ways, and the third is that the essence of everything that arises is wisdom." I found the article in a 2014 issue of Shambhala Sun, a Buddhist magazine. It's about habits of mind, about how we tend to cling to things that are pleasant and try to avoid things that are unpleasant, which, of course, is natural. But when we try to hold on too long or too hard to something that we can't hold on to, which is pretty much everything at some point, and when we try to avoid things that we really need to deal with, we only add to our suffering. And so the Buddhists emphasize various approaches to help us accept things the way they are, not to cling or avoid, but to let be. It turns out the 3 ways I had referenced were 3 basic ways of doing that. 1 being the path of renunciation, isolating yourself from the world and from all its pains and pleasures. The 2nd being the path of compassion, training yourself to respond to everything with loving kindness. And the 3rd being what I had tried to capture in my note, seeing everything that comes into your thoughts or your feelings, no matter what, as a bearer of wisdom. Hence, my note, the essence of everything that arises is wisdom. It reminds me of a Rumi poem that I'm sure many of you know. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. And it ends with, be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Rumi was a mystic, and so for him, and I tend to agree, that which arises from deep within is also a part of the divine. So this is about mindfulness, being in the present moment with whatever is there and greeting it with hospitality, without judgment. And mindfulness meditation builds on this, offering a practice of sitting with whatever is there, watching your thoughts and feelings come and go, and gradually learning what they have to teach you, and learning that you have a stillness and a spaciousness within that can hold it all. This is not a sermon about meditation, but what I started to realize is that the getting of wisdom has a lot to do with where we look for it. We tend to think that our elders have most of the wisdom, as if that's part of the natural arc of life. You get older, you get wiser. To some extent, I'm sure that's true, but it doesn't just happen automatically. And in fact, now that I'm inching toward my 70s, I'm wondering if I'm really that much wiser than I was in my 20s and 30s. Or if it's just more about where we get wisdom than when. Where do we find wisdom? I think I knew as a young adult that wisdom comes from within. It takes a lot of wisdom to be a young adult. You're making so many big decisions about your life at that age. For me, as a closeted young gay woman, at a conservative Christian college, when the word lesbian was not yet in my vocabulary and Christianity was not yet ready to welcome me, it was that wisdom inside me that compelled me to come out to myself and to my family and to be open about my identity to the rest of the world. Occasionally I've wondered how smart that was, because that was the 70s and it limited my career choices. But it also allowed me to be authentic, to be who I really was, not to hide. So I think I was wise early on, and I think that's true of most young people, if they have enough love and support and resources. Wisdom does not come from books, though we can get fooled into thinking so. And in fact, I'm going to talk about a couple of books. Wisdom comes from within, and the way to get in touch with it and to grow it is to listen to ourselves and our bodies, which tell us so much about our energy, our comfort, our restlessness, a tightness in the throat maybe, or how good it feels to lie down in the grass. I'm currently reading a book by David Abram called Becoming Animal, an Earthly Cosmology. Maybe you can see. Abram wants us to remember that we are two-legged animals, part of the animate world, to realize our interbeing with the earth. We have attained amazing scientific and technical knowledge, beneficial and wonderful in many ways, but at the same time, he argues, we have learned to view the earth as a sort of subordinate space that we need to transcend and to treat nature callously. We don't honor or trust our directly felt experience of things, the buzzing of insects, the solidity of an oak desk, the scents rising from the earth as winter turns to spring. We view our senses as almost an odd way of knowing things. It's because having a body, he says, with all its physical limitations is difficult. And the material world that we inhabit can be difficult. And so we protect ourselves from our vulnerability by insulating ourselves from nature. And by doing that, we lose much that could bring us joy. He writes, only by welcoming uncertainty from the get-go, and I hear, by welcoming whatever arises, only by welcoming uncertainty from the get-go can we acclimate ourselves to the shattering wonder that enfolds us. This animal body, for all its susceptibility, remains the primary instrument of all our knowing. The primary instrument of all our knowing, as the capricious earth remains our primary cosmos. End quote. Another book that has heightened my appreciation of the body is a book called The Wisdom of the Body, A Contemplative Journey to Wholeness for Women by Christine Walters Paintner. Paintner's book offers a variety of exercises to help women accept and fully inhabit and honor their bodies, using meditations, written reflections, movement explorations, and more. Like Abram, she invokes the earth as our matrix, or mother, and she speaks of the cycles and processes of nature as an ancient and immense source of wisdom for all of us. Migrations, for example, like the return of the geese that we've been seeing these last couple of weeks, they are part of a rhythm that pulses in us, calling us into leaving and returning, calling us into the unknown. The seasons call us to embrace both the times when we are blossoming and growing and the times of harvest and release and rest and incubation. Wildness calls us to reject the places where we've narrowed our lives. Our bodies are part of all of this. Our bodies know. So along with mindfulness, Paintner advocates bodyfulness. Wisdom then comes from within when we let ourselves hear what we're saying or feeling and don't squelch what we know we know. I'm reminded of a woman I visited at Strong Hospital on one of my recent chaplaincy shifts. We had had a good, meaningful conversation, and she had asked for prayer. And I understood that her beliefs were somewhat Unitarian Universalist, and that her future was very uncertain. And as I was thinking about how to pray, I asked her, "What is it that you most desire?" And I saw something come to her. Her face changed, her voice changed, and she knew something important, just like that. And she shared it with me, and together we approached it in prayer. I think it often happens that way. Suddenly we just know. Like in the poem by Mary Oliver, The Journey. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, you knew what you had to do. Of course, we do squelch what we know sometimes, maybe often, which is why meditation can be so helpful, because it gradually schools us to see what's there. Every time we notice something that makes us uneasy, we come back to our breath, or we make space for whatever it is, or we lean in, or we let it go. And every time we do that, we build our own inner stillness, our own spaciousness, and we can come to embrace what is, to let it be. And best of all, we have all we need to do this inside. And this moment in which we listen holds the wisdom we need. Here's how Wendell Berry puts it in his poem, I Go Among Trees. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet around me, like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them, asleep like cattle. Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. After days of labor, mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns, the trees move. Listen, and you will know what you need to do next, and you will feel your own spaciousness, and you will hear your own wisdom and your own song. May it be so, and amen. Thank you for being here with me.